Albert Einstein, March 14, 1879 to April 18, 1955, was a German-born theoretical physicist, widely acknowledged to be one of the greatest physicists of all time. Einstein is known widely for developing the theory of relativity, but he also made important contributions to the development of the theory of quantum mechanics. Relativity and quantum mechanics are together the two pillars of modern physics. His mass-energy equivalence formula, which arises from relativity theory, has been dubbed the world's most famous equation. His work is also known for its influence on the philosophy of science. He received the 1921 Nobel Prize in Physics, and especially for his discovery of the law of the photoelectric effect, a pivotal step in the development of quantum theory. His intellectual achievements originally resulted in Einstein becoming synonymous with genius. In 1905, a year sometimes described as his annus mirabilis miracle year, Einstein published 4 groundbreaking papers. These outlined the theory of the photoelectric effect, explained Brownian motion, introduced special relativity, and demonstrated mass-energy equivalence. Einstein thought that the laws of classical mechanics could no longer be reconciled with those of the electromagnetic field, which led him to develop his special theory of relativity. He then extended the theory to gravitational fields. He published a paper on general relativity, in 1916, introducing his theory of gravitation. In 1917, he applied the general theory of relativity to model the structure of the universe. He continued to deal with problems of statistical mechanics and quantum theory, which led to his explanation of particle theory and the motion of molecules. He also investigated the thermal properties of light and the quantum theory of radiation, which laid the foundation of the photon theory of light. However, for much of the later part of his career, he worked on 2 ultimately unsuccessful endeavors. First, despite his great contributions to quantum mechanics, he opposed what it evolved into, objecting that nature does not play dice. Second, he attempted to devise a unified field theory, by generalizing his geometric theory of gravitation to include electromagnetism. As a result, he became increasingly isolated from the mainstream of modern physics. Einstein was born in the German Empire, but moved to Switzerland in 1895, forsaking his German citizenship the following year. In 1901, he acquired Swiss citizenship, which he kept for the rest of his life. In 1905, he was awarded a PhD by the University of Zurich. In 1933, while Einstein was visiting the United States, Adolf Hitler came to power. Einstein did not return to Germany because he objected to the policies of the newly elected Nazi-led government. He settled in the United States and became an American citizen in 1940. On the eve of World War II, he endorsed a letter to President Franklin D. Roosevelt alerting him to the potential German nuclear weapons program and recommending that the U.S. begin similar research. Einstein supported the Allies, but he generally denounced the idea of nuclear weapons. Albert Einstein was born in Ulm, in the Kingdom of Württemberg in the German Empire, on March 14, 1879, into a family of secular Ashkenazi Jews. His parents were Hermann Einstein, a salesman and engineer, and Pauline Koch. In 1880, the family moved to Munich, where Einstein's father and his uncle Jakob founded Elektrotechnische Fabrik J. Einstein and CIE, a company that manufactured electrical equipment based on direct current. Albert attended a Catholic elementary school in Munich, from the age of 5, for 3 years. At the age of 8, he was transferred to the Luitpold Gymnasium, now known as the Albert Einstein Gymnasium, where he received advanced primary and secondary school education until he left the German Empire 7 years later. In 1894, Hermann and Jacobs Company lost a bid to supply the city of Munich with electrical lighting because they lacked the capital to convert their equipment from the direct current DC standard to the more efficient alternating current AC standard. The loss forced the sale of the Munich factory. In search of business, the Einstein family moved to Italy, first to Milan and a few months later to Pavia. Einstein, then 15, stayed in Munich to finish his studies at the Luitpold Gymnasium. His father intended for him to pursue electrical engineering, but Einstein clashed with the authorities and resented the school's regimen and teaching method. He later wrote that the spirit of learning and creative thought was lost in strict rote learning. At the end of December 1894, he traveled to Italy to join his family in Pavia, convincing the school to let him go by using a doctor's note. During his time in Italy he wrote a short essay with the title On the Investigation of the State of the Ether in a Magnetic Field. Einstein excelled at math and physics from a young age, reaching a mathematical level years ahead of his peers. The 12-year-old Einstein taught himself algebra and Euclidean geometry over a single summer. Einstein also independently discovered his own original proof of the Pythagorean theorem at age 12. A family tutor, Max Talmud, says that after he had given the 12-year-old Einstein a geometry textbook, after a short time Einstein had worked through the whole book. He thereupon devoted himself to higher mathematics. No. Soon the flight of his mathematical genius was so high I could not follow. His passion for geometry and algebra led the 12-year-old to become convinced that nature could be understood as a mathematical structure. Einstein started teaching himself calculus at 12, and as a 14-year-old he says he had mastered integral and different calculus. At age 13, when he had become more seriously interested in philosophy and music, Einstein was introduced to Kant's critique of pure reason. Kant became his favorite philosopher, his tutor stating, at the time he was still a child, only 13 years old, yet Kant's work, I am comprehensible to ordinary mortals, seemed to be clear to him. In 1895, at the age of 16, Einstein took the entrance examinations for the Swiss Federal Polytechnic School in Zurich, later the Eidgenössische Technische Hochschule. He failed to reach the required standard in the general part of the examination, but obtained exceptional grades in physics and mathematics. On the advice of the principal of the Polytechnic School, he attended the Argovian Cantonal School Gymnasium in Aar of Switzerland, in 1895 and 1896, to complete his secondary schooling. While lodging with the family of Professor Jost Winteler, he fell in love with Winteler's daughter, Marie. Albert's sister Maha later married Winteler's son Paul. In January 1896, with his father's approval, Einstein renounced his citizenship in the German kingdom of Württemberg to avoid military service. In September 1896, he passed the Swiss Matura with mostly good grades, including a top grade of 6 in physics and mathematical subjects, on a scale of 1 to 6. At 17, he enrolled in the 4-year mathematics and physics teaching diploma program at the Zurich Polytechnic School. Marie Winteler, who was a year older, moved to Olsberg, Switzerland, for a teaching post. Einstein's future wife, a 20-year-old Serbian named Mileva Maric, also enrolled at the Polytechnic School that year. She was the only woman among the 6 students in the mathematics and physics section of the teaching diploma course. Over the next few years, Einstein's and Maric's friendship developed into a romance, and they spent countless hours debating and reading books together on extracurricular physics in which they were both interested. Einstein wrote in his letters to Maric that he preferred studying alongside her. In 1900, Einstein passed the exams in maths and physics and was awarded the federal teaching diploma. There is eyewitness evidence and several letters over many years that indicate Marich might have collaborated with Einstein prior to his 1905 papers, known as the Annus Mirabilis papers, and that they developed some of the concepts together during their studies, although some historians of physics who have studied the issue disagree that she made any substantive contributions. Early correspondence between Einstein and Marich was discovered and published in 1987, which revealed that the couple had a daughter named Liesl born in early 1902, in Novi Sad, where Marich was staying with her parents. Marich returned to Switzerland without the child, whose real name and fate are unknown. The contents of Einstein's letter in September 1903 suggest that the girl was either given up for adoption or died of scarlet fever in infancy. Einstein and Marich married in January 1903. In May 1904, their son Hans Albert Einstein was born in Bern, Switzerland. Their son Eduard was born in Zurich in July 1910. The couple moved to Berlin in April 1914. But Marich returned to Zurich with their sons after learning that despite their close relationship before, Einstein's chief romantic attraction was now his cousin Elsa Lowenthal. She was his first cousin maternally and the second cousin paternally. They divorced on February 14, 1919, having lived apart for 5 years. As part of the divorce settlement, Einstein transferred his Nobel Prize fund to Marich when he won it. Eduard had a breakdown at about age 20, and was diagnosed with schizophrenia. His mother cared for him and he was also committed to asylums for several periods, finally being committed permanently after her death. In letters revealed in 2015, Einstein wrote to his early love Marie Winteler about his marriage and his strong feeling for her. He wrote in 1910, while his wife was pregnant with their second child, "I think of you in heartfelt love every spare minute and am so unhappy as only a man can be." He spoke about a misguided love and a missed life regarding his love for Marie. Einstein married Elsa Lowenthal in 1919, after having a relationship with her since 1912. They emigrated to the United States in 1933. Elsa was diagnosed with heart and kidney problems in 1935 and died in December 1936. In 1923, Einstein fell in love with a secretary named Betty Newman, the niece of a close friend, Hans Mussum. In a volume of letters released by Hebrew University of Jerusalem in 2006, Einstein described about 6 women, including Marguerite Lebach, a blonde Australian, Estella Katzenellenbogen, the rich owner of a florist business, Toni Mendel, a wealthy Jewish widow, and Ethel Michanowski, a Berlin socialite, with whom he spent time and from whom he received gifts while being married to Elsa. Later, after the death of his second wife Elsa, Einstein was briefly in a relationship with Margarita Konenkova. Konenkova was a Russian spy who was married to the noted Russian sculptor Sergei Konenkova, who created the bronze bust of Einstein at the Institute for Advanced Study at Princeton. A big thank you to all of you for watching.